is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Drivers, welcome to episode 62 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today our guest is Deborah Hurwitz, and we're going to be talking all about what it takes to pound the pavement for your dream. So when I say pound the pavement, I mean like what does it take to get what you really want versus what you'll compromise for. And Deborah shares her story about graduating from school and, wanting to pursue music in a time when women were not really respected in the music industry, and she hit the pavement in New York City to make those dreams of hers come true. So there's so much that she shares in this episode that I think will be so inspiring to anyone listening in. No matter what industry you're trying to get into, you have to really be persistent and committed to that goal. And to give you some background about Deborah, she's a composer and music director, recording artist with a 25-year career in the show business, primarily on Broadway shows like Mamma Mia and Jersey Boys, and live productions such as Cirque du Soleil in Hollywood. And she toured with Cyndi Lauper and Cher. So this episode is going to be just filled with a lot of insightful and actionable nuggets. So some of the things that we talk about in the episode are how to declare your mission statement and what kind of networking strategies you can use to break into the industry of your choice. We talk about finding connections in pre-internet days. She talks about how she was able to make connections just by doing some research. And this is before the internet was around, you guys. So if you think that you can't do it with the internet, there are people doing it without. We also talk about how to build confidence and why Deborah pivoted into entrepreneurship later on into her career. So there's lots here that I know you guys will absolutely love. Before we get into the episode, remember, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether it be on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, wherever. Make sure you're getting updates when we are releasing new episodes. And if you haven't, make sure you leave a review as well. I love reading those iTunes reviews, and those help other people learn more about the show. So please, please, please leave one if you can. If you want to follow us on social, all you have to do is find @Dreams and Drive, and we're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you want today's show notes, because there are some good tweetables from this episode, just go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 62. And I'm sorry about some points in the interview. I don't know what happened with my mic, but you can hear me typing. And you can also hear like some background noise at some point. So I'm sorry about that, and I apologize from now. I know that you guys are going to love this episode, so I'm going to stop talking and we're going to get right into it. Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of Dreams and Drive.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm excited to talk to you, and hear all about your career as a composer, a music director, and a recording artist. I know a lot of our dream drivers listening in will be excited to learn about all the tips and advice and stories and lessons of wisdom that you're going to be sharing with us today.
A tall order, but I will do my best. I certainly have stories for days.
So the first thing, as you know, that we love to ask our guests is what inspired you as a child. So if I were to say, who was Deborah, the 8-year-old? How would you describe yourself?
Thank you. That's a great question. Not many people ask about that early on.
It's important.
I was attracted to music very, very early on. In fact, I was musical before I even really knew what that meant. In Hebrew school, which I started very early, we would learn songs, and my family earlier on were sort of more observant Jewish, like we had Friday night Shabbat at home, and we had special dinner together and sang songs. So very, very early on, even as like a 4 or 5-year-old, I was into songs and music and learning things in Hebrew school. And my parents got me as a Hanukkah present one year, a little tiny electric organ, like this little teeny toy thing that had a couple octaves worth of keys, a few buttons to the left that played chords. It just sounded like that super cheesy accordion-y kind of sound. And the the notes were marked 1, 1 plus, 2, 2 plus, like the white notes all had numbers and the black notes had like pluses. So there were like a C was a 1 and then a C sharp was a 1 plus. And I didn't know what any of that meant, but I do remember coming home from Hebrew school and wanting to remember a song that I learned and loved. And I don't remember this completely, but my dad helps to fill in the details a little because he loves to tell this story, that he heard some plunk, 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 and a little sing, 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 and then silence. And then plunk, 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 sing, 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 and then silence. And he came down and he saw that I was essentially taking dictation. I was figuring out what the notes were to this song that I liked and then writing down the numbers. I had no musical education. I was basically teaching myself. And that I then, wrote down, transcribed what I was liking musically, and then put the piece of paper on the little bitty music stand. And I'm, 6 years old, kneeling in front of a little toy organ, and then played it. And that inspired my parents to buy for, I believe, $30 at the time. This was in the dark ages when they bought me this old garage sale piano. And I played it. And then we were living in England at the time. I was born in England to American parents who are from the Philadelphia area. Yeah, my dad was working for the American government in England, and I have two younger sisters, and one of them and I were born in England. So we were the American family in England, and then when we came to the States when I was about 10, I felt like I was the little English girl in America. So it took me a long time.
Did you have an accent? Did you have an English?
I did.
Oh,
as a little girl, I had an English accent, and unfortunately, kids can be kind of mean. And, when you're young, you just want to fit in. And they made fun of me for my accent, and I got rid of it as soon as humanly possible. I did manage to avoid the South Jersey accent that you can really hear from a mile away. And most people can't necessarily tell where I'm from when they first hear me speak. But that was basically it. I just had this instinctive love of and affinity for music. I taught myself to some extent those initial kinds of language and building blocks of learning and remembering and playing, and then began to, on that old piano, work out the stuff that I was learning. So at my first piano lesson, my parents found me a piano teacher that would start me. I basically performed for my piano teacher, like, here's where I am so far. And then what she did was catch me up. What I had already done was just instinctively learn by ear. And she caught me up with formal education, learning, here are the notes. Like, instead of it being 1, 2, 3, it was A, B, C. So she taught me notation, and she taught me the more formal music education side of things that then became the foundation for all of my professional skills, really.
So how did that, how did your love for music morph as you went to middle school, high school, and throughout college? Like, did you pursue it throughout those years?
I did. No, it was always very much a sideline. Like, school was the priority, school, my friends, but there was this thread running through everything. The lessons became recitals and competitions. And from a very early age, I was very much in the world of musical accomplishment. I felt, not that my parents put this on me, they certainly supported me doing whatever I wanted to do, but I've always been kind of a type A, overachieving, goal-oriented person. The very first competition that I did, I was about 7 or 8 years old. There's a family resort called Butlin's over in England. That's kind of like the Disney World of England, but a little bit more kind of casual, blue collar kind of thing. And we went on this family vacation, and they had this talent competition, just a very casual thing. And I won the talent competition for that resort. And then that put me into these semifinals and regional finals. It became this thing where the very last stage was competing for a concert, like a recital spot at the London's Palladium, which is one of, like, the Royal Albert Hall, which is one of the top performance venues in England. And I made it to the finals, and I didn't win. And the girl who won had this fun little puppet show and cute gimmicky thing that made people laugh. And I just sat there and played Mozart. But I did make it to that level, and I was kind of hooked at that point on competition. I was playing for 3,000 people at age 8. I was scared to death, but I also felt compelled to just achieve everything I could and do the best I could. So throughout middle school and high school, there was really, for me, a focus on the classical world, because I was very much thinking as a pianist and someone who, like, the highest achievement of what you could do on the piano was to be in that classical world of symphonies and competitions and recitals. And so that's where I was. But my love, where I was really inspired and where I became more and more attracted throughout high school, was in the commercial world, in pop music, in music for commercials and TV and in movies. I loved groove. I loved pop and rock. These people who have this classical background or then move into like jazz or punk or R&B. I didn't have any of that. I just loved pop music. I loved top 40. I loved big vocal sounds. I loved big drums. And, this was I'm going to have to date myself here, but this was like in the late 80s, early 90s. That was when I really came of age. And so there were just these big, giant drums and big hair bands and stuff like that. And I just loved all of that. And I wanted to learn the techniques to make that kind of music. So I took my considerable classical virtuoso chops and took them into the worlds of recording studios and pop music production. And so through high school, I continued to perform, and I auditioned for colleges, Princeton included, with the classical repertoire. But I was really eyeballing doing something that I considered to be much more vital and alive and sexy, which was newer, more modern music. I was not really in love with Schumann and Mozart by the time I graduated high school.
So 2 things here. I just want to say for the people listening in, Deborah is also a Princeton alum, as I am. We've had a few Princeton alum on the show, so I don't want people to think that, I'm always bringing on Princeton guests, but I do love my fellow Tigers.
Yeah, baby. Thank you.
So one thing I wanted to ask you before we go, deeper into how you pursued that after college is, when you were younger, how much were you practicing this craft of yours and this talent of yours? Was it something that you were doing all the time in your spare time?
That's a great question, and one I would like to assure your listeners. One of the things that I was always either intimidated by or just guilted by, really, was when I would see these, stories of people who would just, practice their fingers bloody. They were 7 hours a day at their instrument or on the ice skating rink or whatever it was. And it's like, if you're going to be success, you have to commit yourself totally. And to be honest, when I was much younger, I was on the piano constantly, and I don't remember feeling like I needed to or wanted to. It was just where I was. As I got older, and especially in high school, when I had these other interests, I was doing theater and band stuff. I liked boys. I had friends. I was, or sometimes I just liked to be in my room and read, it wasn't, oh, I just want to be practicing all the time. I more felt it as an obligation, to be honest, which was one of the things that made me realize that a classical concert pianist was not the passion career for me. My guideline was 2 hours a day. That was my guideline. Sometimes I did it and sometimes I didn't. When I did it, it was noticeable. There's no question that the difference was significant. And I was in lessons. I had piano lessons every week from age 7 to when I graduated high school, with very few exceptions. So I always had a weekly lesson. I always had homework. I always had something to practice for. And sometimes I did more and sometimes I did less. And I was not the fully committed, I do nothing else kind of artist. But I made my way. I developed some skills. I developed some chops. That was definitely the foundation for what I've done since then.
You read my mind, because I wanted to ask you how important was routine in helping you hone your skills, but I guess you kind of answered that, right?
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that while there are a host of important professional skills that go along with doing commercial music, making music for broadcast and for live shows, it's not the same level of precision and dexterity and virtuoso performance to do the kind of music that I do as it is to, for example, play a 45-minute classical recital with the top masters and the top piano pieces. I still consider myself to be a decent classical player, but jumping ahead a little, for example, when I went on my Cirque du Soleil audition, I had to do a whole bunch of woodshedding of some Chopin preludes and some solo piano pieces that I just hadn't really had in my fingers for years and years. And it was a humbling experience to realize how much work I needed to do to get back to anything resembling a decent performance of that kind of work.
So you graduated from Princeton with a Bachelor's of Arts in Music Theory and Composition, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so what were your first few years after college like? Did you go straight into commercial music? Like, what were those first formative years like?
Those first years were quite the thing. It was quite quite the journey. Somewhere around between, well, as you know, at Princeton, you declare your major junior year. So those first couple of years, I wasn't even sure what I was going to be doing with my life. And I was kind of hearing it from both ends of the people who had been aware of my academic accomplishments and my overall brain power, or whatever you call it, were saying, oh my God, you're not going to waste your brains on a music career, are you? What kind of fool would do that? And then on the musical side, the people who were familiar with my artistic world and my quote, gifted and talented child status as a pianist, were just saying, oh my God, you can't waste your talent going and being some kind of lawyer or corporate tool, are you? It was just sort of one of these, whatever I did, there was going to be perhaps something I was missing or compromising. But going into junior year, I did have a few revelations. There was some work that I did. I don't know if you're familiar with Landmark Education. They do all these super intense personal growth seminars. Years and years ago, it was just the Forum. Years before that, it was EST, Earhart Seminars Training. These things were so intense, they got kind of like a cult-like reputation. So if any of your listeners are familiar with it, they might have some strong opinions about it. But I will say that doing that work while I was in college was invaluable because it helped me really connect to what I deeply wanted, as opposed to what I was going to compromise to for practical concerns. So I made my choice to major in music and really devote myself to making a career happen in music after graduation, because that was my first choice. That was my forget practical, forget what's the likelihood I can actually make a living, forget there's no such thing as a job in this business that lasts for, that's not project based and can start and stop at any moment. This is what I really want to do. This is what I'm declaring as my mission statement. I will make a living in my chosen field. So I came out of college with that mission statement, and I literally pounded the pavement. Everybody coming out of my class was doing these, management track, and, analyst intern positions at Goldman Sachs and at all the big law firms and all the big finance firms. Everybody was in their pinstripe suits and their briefcases. And I did that too. Only I was going into production houses that were making music for commercials and, and TV jingle houses. And I was finding any place in New York City that called itself a music shop of any kind. And there were some bigger ones and some littler ones. And I put on my Christian Dior pinstripe suit and I carried my briefcase with my folder with my resume into these shops where these guys are sitting there in their jeans and their black t-shirts and their cigarettes dangling out of their mouths going, who the hell, who are you? What are you doing? So it was pretty funny, me trying to bring my here's how you get a job coming out of Princeton mindset into the New York commercial music world. What ended up happening was within those first few months, and I was commuting from my sister's Rutgers dorm, where
oh my God, Northeast living. Corridor up to Penn Station.
You know it, right? So I'm living in Rutgers. I'm commuting on that hour and 10-minute train going into Penn Station, and I had two jobs at once to make a total of $375 a week. The first job was at a company called Look & Co., which was a high-end sexy jingle company. They did a bunch of jingles that probably nobody in this generation would recognize, but they did an Oldsmobile thing that ran for a decade. This is not your father's Oldsmobile, right? Somebody made millions of dollars on that one jingle. And this was the era in the 90s of people could buy houses on one jingle. People's careers, companies, decade-long trajectories were made by a single advertising campaign or a single TV show that hit big, because this was before the proliferation of hundreds and hundreds of media channels, whether Netflix, Amazon, cable channels, webcast, pod ups, it was before any of that. You basically had three networked, television channels, and all of the music went into those TV shows, those advertising channels. There was big money in a single commercial. So I got hooked up with Look as an intern. My job was literally emptying ashtrays, confirming talent for the recording sessions the next day, that kind of thing. And then I did that from, I did that at night. I started there at 4:00 in the afternoon and worked until whenever they were done. So if they were mixing something until midnight or 1 a.m., I was there until midnight or 1 a.m. My day job was as a sales rep. I was a rep for Easy Rider Music, which was a company that had made its entire existence, very fancy studio, lots of money, ran for years and years on Coors Light, it's the right beer now. That jingle was
wow.
claim to fame. And it was a jingle that was based on a song he wrote in college. His college buddy was an executive at the advertising agency. He brought him in. Don't Coors Light is the right beer now. They won that campaign. That campaign ran for years and years. And that was where I was located to do the job of bringing in new work. And my deal at both of these houses was, for the first house where I was a rep, if I brought in a job, I could write on the job. Right. So I got to build my reel as a composer that way. I had to do it on my own time. I was last in line for any kind of studio. I had no budget. I wasn't allowed to hire musicians. I had to do everything on my own. But I was at least allowed to make something for the project that could compete with everything else that agency, that house was submitting. And then at Looking Company, my night internship, I got the studio to use for whatever it was I needed or wanted to do after everybody else was done. So again, last person in line.
That's a wait, yeah.
I had it. And so there were nights when I was crashing on the couch in the conference room and, bringing in a change of clothes and going back to work at 9 a.m. at the other place 5 blocks away the next day. So I did those 2 jobs for that paltry few hundred a week for I think 4 or 5 months. That was my right after college thing. And I remember the very first time I had made it down to one job. They gave me a raise at the one place, and I gave up the internship at the other. And I was able to work just at one place. And I remember coming home after a 9 to 6 kind of day, and actually sitting in my apartment at 7 o'clock at night, going, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm on vacation. I have 13 whole hours before I have to be back at work again. This is amazing." So I was then pounding the pavement for all kinds of performance opportunities as well. While I was working the jingle houses, I was also working the Broadway pits because I wanted to have the opportunity to get into the Broadway world, the performance world of musical theater. I'd done all of that throughout high school and college. And I wanted to, I was very ambitious about becoming a conductor and music director, as well as becoming a composer of music that people were familiar with in famous projects. So I was cold calling the musicians, the keyboard players and the conductors in all of the Broadway shows. I was able to just, pick up a program and go to the union and get their phone number. Some people didn't even have email at this time because it was the 90s. You said, and I would just call people and I would ask to meet with them, and I would tell them I was, new in town and trying to make it and wanting to get their advice. And I just role modeled people and, found people who were doing what I wanted to do and asked them to coffee, asked them to lunch, asked if I could sit and watch them do their thing, visited their studios, visited them in the pit. And eventually I got the chance to sub for a player who was a lovely guy and really gave me my Broadway break. And I got to play one of the worst shows ever written called Aspects of Love, which only was produced because of Andrew Lloyd Webber. He wrote it. He's a big famous name. And they put the show up. So that was my first Broadway show. I then was a sub in Tommy. I was a sub for Jekyll and Hyde. And I then got hired as a sub for Miss Saigon. And that was kind of my first real gig. I was a staff rehearsal pianist there. And then I was a keyboard sub that played both of the books. And then I got my chance to conduct the show. And I was an assistant. This was, 6-7 years in the late 90s, just before the show closed. I covered a 3-month leave of absence by one of the assistant conductors, and I officially earned the title assistant conductor. So I made my Broadway conducting debut when I was 28 or 29. And along the way, I'd had a few different commercials go national out of, hundreds of demos. I mean, for every success, there's always anywhere between 20 and 200 failures, right? But I was, kind of putting it together, making this combined living of performing, music directing, and writing and producing music for broadcast.
Oh my God. As you were speaking, there were so many things that I was writing down that I want to ask you, but let me see. So number one of the things I really picked out from you telling, your evolution over those years was the idea of hitting the pavement and knowing, making connections. How did you know what the possible career opportunities within the field were that you wanted to pursue? Like, did you talk to people, or did you already have a sense of these are certain fields I could follow?
It's really funny that you asked that question, because as you're asking, I'm sitting here reaching into my memory, just trying to think, what did give me the information? I'm so internet focused now, right? Like now you just Google whatever you want to know. And there was no such thing as that. I think I do remember, I have one memory of it might have even been the Yellow Pages. That's how much of a dinosaur this time was. It was certainly something written. It was either the Yellow Pages. There might have been some sort of alumni directory, but I think it was, I literally went to every company that was listed in whatever this directory was that had the word music in it, and just literally called them or visited them and just kind of found out what and who they were and what I might do if there was something to do. And some of them were complete dead ends. Like some of it was, like a guitar repair shop, right? Had nothing to do with me. Or some of it was, a big giant jingle house. Like I remember I knocked on the door of Crushing Enterprises, not knowing who Crushing Enterprises were. They were in the same building. This is all coming back now. They were in the same building as someone else I had gone to that had the name music in it. And it was like a dead end. It was, I don't know, some guy, some repair shop of some gear, some dusty old thing, just nothing that was really a career opportunity for me. But in the same building, I remember seeing Crushing Enterprises on the directory, like the elevator directory, and thinking, I remember hearing the name Crushing. This was after I had visited a few places and I'd asked about making music to go on TV. Like that was sort of my guiding principle, was like, who's making the music that goes on TV? Who's making the music that goes on these car commercials that I think are so sexy, and soda commercials, and this front running, cutting edge, modern sounding, slick. Like slick was a big deal for me. I wanted to make stuff that sounded really good, really interesting, really clean, really smart. Technique interested me. So I wanted to get music on TV, and I wanted to play Broadway shows. And so I started with that, like any company that had music in it. And I remember hearing about Crushing from someone. And then I realized, I'm in the building and Crushing is here. And I think I did not have an appointment. I just went up there, and I was in my little suit and my little briefcase. I just went up there and I'd like to talk to somebody about a job.
You had a lot of confidence. That takes a lot of confidence, especially being young, too, and kind of fresh out of school. And how did you get that confidence to really just go in there? And I'm pretty sure at this time it was probably a man's world too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they had a great time messing with me. I mean, they did. I mean, when I described, the guy in the t-shirt and jeans smoking with his feet on the desk, looking at me going, what? Like I've got two heads. That was Crushing. That was those guys, right? They were just too cool for the room. They didn't know what to make of me. And they kind of toyed with me like cats with a mouse. And then, kept my name and phone number and said, we'll call you. See you later. It was a big rejection. But you ask about the confidence, and it's funny. I remember this served me also when I was sales repping and making these cold calls to agencies. I have to say that in addition to, some good upbringing, my parents always taught me that I could go after whatever I wanted, that I shouldn't be afraid to take a man's job, that I could achieve whatever I wanted to achieve, whatever I set my mind to, that hard work and learning and doing my best would get me where I needed to go. Like I got a pretty clear foundation on that. But specifically, it was Princeton too. I did have that sense that I am in, and I hate to use the E word, but I'm in an elite club. I'm in a place. I'm in that rarefied air of people who get to succeed in life. And even though I'm in this, I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be able to succeed. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be able to get in the door. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be able to pick up the phone and have the person I'm looking for answer it. I didn't know what I wasn't supposed to achieve. So, and I had, as a Princeton junior and senior, whether it was annual giving, volunteer calls, or just role modeling, looking, interviewing, I could identify myself as, Deborah Hurwitz, class of, and ask for who I wanted to speak to, and they would get on the phone and be friendly. And that was CEOs, and that was people who were, quote unquote, important, that might not have taken a call if you were coming from a place of hierarchy or low man on the totem pole. But for me, I was like, well, I have a purpose. I have a reason for calling. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm asking for your attention. I'm eligible for your attention. I have something to offer. Please consider me. And that was kind of my stand. And it was certainly the first, several years in New York did their bit to beat me down. It wasn't that I actually experienced all that success right away, but I was really willing to work hard. I was willing to show up at all hours. I was ready and willing to learn anything and everything. I wanted to be good. I didn't come in entitled. I don't mean to say by all of this that I was like entitled. I actually see a lot of that in younger generations, and I feel dismayed by that. Like, no, you got to earn it, So, and I appreciate you asking about the confidence, because the confidence to say, I deserve a chance here, or I deserve to walk in the door and learn, prove myself, show up. Give me the chance to show up. Yes, absolutely. But then in the showing up, you've got to earn the cred, the paycheck, the whatever it is that you're going for. That's different from entitled, like just because I came out of Princeton, I get to be the boss, or I'm already good, or I'm already accomplished, or I'm already deserving of this level of responsibility or this compensation, or I already have this skill set. I didn't have any of the skill sets. I was there to learn. I was there to be allowed in the room. And that is what I got the chance to do. I got the chance to be in the room and learn, and eventually, complete a skill set that would allow me to execute at a level that people then said, yeah, I'll buy that piece of music, or I'll hire you for this, or I'll have you sub on this show, or I'll have you be a composer in my company.
What's actually so interesting? The idea that you were fascinated with the world of commercial music, because I feel like that's something, like let's say someone says, I want to be in the music industry, right? The first thing they might think about is wanting to be the star, wanting to be like a recording artist. But you had a very niche focus, which I think a lot of people, they may not everyone considers the other avenues, and the other ways to shine, because that is still a viable business, and that's still a viable profession. So many people don't realize that it's something that we hear all day,
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
You're basically bringing up two different things, so let me address them both. First of all, there's no question that I would have been very happy to be a rock star at that time, before I actually did some touring with rock stars and did some work as an artist and went into the world of performing and self-promotion and all that, and discovered that there was a lot about that world I didn't like. So I do remember feeling very attracted to the recording studios where the music was made. And although I am and have been since I was 12 a singer-songwriter, I didn't feel that kind of pull to be like, I must be the star of the music video kind of thing. So I didn't have quite that ambition in the first place, but by all means, it was in the mix. I mean, I was very happy when people liked hearing my songs. And it's funny that you did bring this up, because I think I must have blocked it out like I was traumatized or something. I got a lot of feedback fairly early on in my early 20s that while I was talented as a writer and a player, that people who liked my songs or thought that I had something to offer as a songwriter or composer thought that other people should be singing my stuff. Now I'll leave it up to your audience to hear my work. I'm definitely a better singer now than I was when I was 22. But singing was always kind of fourth or fifth on the list of stuff I did well. It was never like, I am a singer first and foremost. That was not my primary way of telling the story. And I feel that I'm a much better storyteller as a writer-producer. But I certainly sing my own demos all the time, and I work with singers all the time who are like, who sang the demo? And I'll be like, me. They'll be like, really? Why aren't you just doing the song? Because I want your voice on it. So my voice is in the mix as a viable alternative. But trying to really make it solely as a singer-songwriter went against a lot of the stuff that I also wanted to do and felt just as strongly about. And I did enough touring early on, both with the Broadway shows and with with other artists, that I learned quickly that the road was not the place for me. And you really can't be an artist primarily, like a recording artist or performing artist, without really putting in those nights on the road and performing all over the place, especially now. And that brings me to the second piece of what you were saying, that it's a viable career alternative. I will tell you in all honesty, it is a much different industry now. Okay. There isn't the same opportunity to create original music for commercials and TV shows. Movies, yes, but there isn't the same opportunity. The industry around creating music for commercials and television shows is not the same. What happens now, 9 times out of 10, is rather than commissioning an original work and having a commercial budget for a jingle that would be, $20,000 to $50,000 for a 30-second piece, now it's licensing. And they might spend more than $50,000 license a really famous piece, or they might spend $50 to license an unknown. But the market has changed so substantially because of the internet, because of essentially music becoming free, because there are so many more people that can make, quote, radio ready, unquote, production quality music with one keyboard in their house. You know what I mean? Like what used to require an enormous amount of gear, equipment, years of skill building in operating that equipment is now a laptop and a drive and, a keyboard you can roll up and tuck under your arm. So it's so much easier to simply be a person that calls yourself a music maker. So like the market has been flooded with people doing that, and they don't need to spend those kinds of budgets. They can just license from any number of independent artists who are out there. And there are big licensing companies and big libraries that are now taking the place of what used to be the original music houses, the production houses. So it is a very different market. It's a very different way of making money. It's a different income model. And that is one of the reasons that I started the other business that I started. I don't know when if at all you want to talk in detail about that. That was one of the reasons I chose an internet virtual franchise model to offset the way the internet was killing residual income on the music side. It is a fantastic vehicle for leveraging passive income on the franchise side.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. How did the whole industry changing impact you, and what did you do in order to, to offset it?
Yep, to stay viable and continue to live my posh lifestyle, right? So what happened was so Jersey Boys was kind of my big ride for the last 11 years. We opened 2005 on Broadway, and Broadway company will be closing January 2017. And I wear a lot of hats with that show. I'm the music technical designer and synth programmer for the production worldwide. And I've started up about 20 different companies of Jersey Boys. And I was with the Broadway company for the first 6 years, performing and conducting and taking care of all the electronic music design and synths. In 2011, I got this fantastic opportunity to music direct a Cirque du Soleil show, which was a dream of mine. So this was like the trifecta of awesomeness that I had been looking for. I wanted a reason to leave Jersey Boys. I love the show. I love the company. It's still my family, but 8 times a week for 6 years, everybody's going to be ready for a change at that point. And I am an artist first. And even though this was a cushy, comfortable kind of dream gig, most musicians do not leave long-running Broadway shows as long as they're alive. But I had this incredible opportunity to be located in Los Angeles. It was a sit-down company, not a touring company, so that I could actually live in Los Angeles, work on this show. It was the music director position of a huge new production where Danny Elfman was the composer. And Danny Elfman is an A-list Hollywood film composer that I really admire. So it was an extraordinary opportunity. I jumped at it. It was like a 5-month campaign to get the gig, which I did. And then I put myself in LA and got settled in for a decade-long run of a show that then closed after 2 years. And given what had happened in the industry where I could go back to freelance work that was either New York or LA based, but there was no guarantee. And honestly, I'm 20 plus years into my career. The demo fees, when they're even hiring musicians to create original music, which, as I said, is 90% down, it's all licensing. But even if you are getting hired to make a demo of an original piece, literally the demo fees are the same now as they were 20 years ago. And
what's a demo fee?
A demo fee is anywhere from the $250 to around $1,500 that they pay you to make a 30-second piece that is then going to be reviewed and auditioned by the decision makers, whether that's the advertising agency or the brand, the strategist, the creative team, whoever it is that's making the decision about whether this is the right theme or accompaniment for that picture or that campaign. And literally the same money. Like it was $250 20 years ago. It's $250 now, which means that it's worth, a third of what it was. And when it was 20 years ago, you were competing with 3 other people. You were expected to do maybe 1 or 2 revisions. You were expected to maybe do 1 or 2 versions, but production was a bigger deal. Now you're expected to turn in 10 versions. You're competing with 100 other people, and they expect turnaround in no time with incredible demand, right, on your time and resources. resources for those same number of dollars, which are worth maybe a third to a quarter of what they were worth back in the day. So, rather than bemoaning my fate, right, which there are a lot of people who have just gone, well, screw it, I'm just doing something else, and they've gone into these other careers. So I had this choice of either taking a whopping pay cut, going into a place of much less security than there already was, which is almost none anyway, having to put myself into more and more demanding performing situations, like touring more, doing more shows, doing more self-promotion, which I like performing, but I don't love it. Again, it's like the singing thing. I like a dose of it. I like it to kind of be part of my stew of things that I love to do. But as a focus, it's not my focus. I want to be in the studio. I want to be performing and creating and collaborating in the studio. And so this show closes. I'm sitting here in LA going, oh, now what? That I can either go back to New York and go back to that freelance slog, which I was no longer willing to do. I was no longer willing to go to a place of completely starting over, doing essentially the same pavement pounding that I had done 20 years ago, only with higher level contacts and better options available. But still, it's the hustle. It's the waiting for the next big thing to come along. There's just no such thing as job security. I was at the top of my field. And this is 4 years ago. This is not 20 years ago. Top of my field, it does not get any bigger than what I was doing. And I could count on leveraging that gig into another gig, but there were no guarantees. I was back in the pool competing with the other 100 top people in my field with no guarantees of anything happening. And while I'm a very competitive person and, as I said, goal-oriented and, as you observed, confident, I simply was not willing to be in the position where other people were determining my paycheck, my viability, my worth. And I wanted a level of financial stability and artistic freedom that was simply not going to be available in the industry I was in as it is. And I wanted to be an artist that was only beholden to my own soul and spirit and inspiration, not competing with 100 other people and trying to figure out what the client wants or trying to figure out what's going to sell. I was just exhausted with all of that, to be honest. And I didn't feel like it was getting me to a feeling of here's what I'm here to do on the planet. I wanted to really go deeper and go to a place of true artistic channeling and fulfillment. Like, what am I really here to say? What's my legacy? What's my voice? And I need to get the money handled in order to do that. I couldn't continue to have to pay my mortgage and my rent, because I've got one of each, a mortgage in LA, rent in New York, by doing the music, and expect also to be able to be a purist artist, right? So I was introduced to this network marketing company that's a health and wellness company, has absolutely nothing to do with music on its face, but it is about residual income and passive income and time leveraging. And I won't get into an ad for my business right now, but I certainly will invite anybody who wants to know more to talk to me, because one of the big perks of doing this business has been not only have I been able to help myself, but I have been able and continue to be able to help other people. Like, helping other people become successful is the business model, which is kind of the antidote to all of the super competitive, cutthroat corporate and entertainment industry mishigas that I've had to deal with. So getting the chance to really empower others, it's a health and wellness product line that I love, that people can't believe how old I am when they look at me, which is why I'm not going to tell you how old I am, even though you know. And that has become kind of the baseline for me. It's something that I own, that I can work from anywhere flexibly. All I need is internet and a phone. I work with amazing people. I choose my hours. I choose my people. I choose my team. There's no income ceiling, very little risk, very low overhead. And it's a truly viable model. There are a lot of network marketing companies out there. I think it's a great way to leverage your time into a passive income stream. It requires patience, consistency. It requires doggedness. It requires showing up even when you don't feel like it. It requires being able to withstand rejection. And all those things were things I was really practiced in.
You already had to deal with all that stuff.
I had that skill set in spades. So this, by comparison, was way easier. So now what I have is a business that I can, take anywhere, do anywhere, that runs without me as well as with me. And so I don't sweat like how I'm paying for my life in 5 years. I don't sweat the changes in the industry. I don't sweat the drop in residual income from music, because I have a totally different expanded portfolio of residual income streams with network marketing.
So,
yeah.
No. I was just going to ask you, so what have been some of like the biggest lessons you've learned just from being an entrepreneur now? What are some of the things that you think our dream drivers need to understand if they're pursuing their passion on one end, but also have, let's say, they're taking the entrepreneurial route on the other end?
Yep, got it. No, that's a great question. And I think it's a lifelong journey. You've got to be willing to be a student of life and a student of yourself. Really dig in. What is it that lights you up and makes you tick? And, sometimes we put these pressures on ourselves. Like I do it with myself too. Like, what's my passion? What do I really want to be doing? What am I meant to do? And that can be a great inquiry to get into. But as soon as it feels like pressure, like I have to figure out what I'm doing with my day or my week or what I'm calling my business or what I'm, that kind of thing, then you don't want to be pressuring yourself with like, what is my passion? You just want to really get to, what lights me up? How can I serve? How can I be of service? How can I be a contribution? Where can I solve a problem? What are my basic needs that I need to get met so that I can free myself up to be generous, so that I can free myself up to be compassionate? I think it's just really important to know yourself and get out of your own way. So much of the time we have these dreams or we have these wishes, but we are our own worst saboteurs. We are the obstacles that we need to transcend. So I think it's really important always to be doing your personal growth work. If you're in a particular industry, read the books and follow the gurus and the mentors and the teachers in your industry. If it's just sort of general entrepreneurship, you want to read about successful people. You want to read about fulfilled people, authentic people. Don't be too blinded by glitz and glam and credit, because I'll quote one of my favorite gurus here, really the original life coach, Tony.
I love Tony.
I'm a huge Tony fan, gigantic Tony fan. And I met him when I was touring with Cyndi Lauper and Cher, and we were doing the HBO special at the MGM Grand. He was there, and
wow.
And I got to thank him because his like late night infomercial when I was on a tour that I hated and feeling like my life was plateauing and not going anywhere, kind of got me out of where I was and into the next space. And I got to thank him from a place of, a successful and glamorous place, which was nice. But one of the things that he talks about, and this is sort of a running theme with him lately, is the difference between the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. He describes the science of achievement as something that's, essentially you can follow the steps to get you to a certain place. There is a science to having a better body. There's a science to having better sleep and better energy. There's a science to making money. There's a science to accomplishing certain things in a certain field. There's a science to it. And that people can sometimes spend their lives in like a compelled place to achieve, and then achieve those markers and then find themselves depressed. He's like, this is why I will hear from somebody who's just won a Super Bowl or just won an Academy Award or just sold their company for $50 million, and they're depressed and they can't tell anybody because everybody thinks they should be so deliriously happy. And that's the thing, is you want to make sure that you are addressing who you are at your core, because those external measures of achievement, whether it's money or credit or fame or associations or whatever it is, are only going to get you so far if you're not really living your authenticity, if you're not really identifying with something that's meaningful to you and pursuing that and being in service or in a place of contribution somehow. And that the art of fulfillment is a much different thing, that somebody else can tell you what the achievement should look like, but nobody can tell you what the fulfillment looks like. That's very personal. And I think that's such an important distinction, and something that the earlier you get in on that, the happier you're going to be.
So in your Twitter profile, you have, as part of it is you're a recovering perfectionist. Is this something that you are even working on now, is figuring out what fulfillment means to you?
Always. It's so funny. Good for you doing your research. I'm gonna have to take that. No, I'm just kidding. I have to perfect that. There's a saying, perfection is paralysis, right? I have been a student lately of the 80-20 rule. This is also in the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Workweek, which is a super entrepreneurial resource that I recommend anyone who's really looking to streamline an entrepreneurial life or a lifestyle business. Really check that out. The idea is 20% of the effort will get you 80% of where you want to go. And it takes the other 80% to get that last 20%. And you want to be not such a perfectionist with how things need to be, especially if you're an artist. Sometimes we can just tinker and tinker and tinker, trying to get it just right, trying to fix and trying to perfect. And that's not really getting you the growth that you really want or need. The better thing is to say, this is good enough. This is what it is. I've learned what I needed to learn, and I'm going to start fresh with the next thing. I agonize over the perfect text or email to the perfect person that I want to think of me in the perfect way. I definitely agonize over my own creations musically. I agonize over the right outfit for an important meeting, right? And it's like this kind of perfectionistic tendency of being constantly disappointed because nothing is ever good enough, is a real drag. It really gets in the way of peace of mind. So I joke recovering perfectionist because, like they say, recovering alcoholic, you're never not an alcoholic. You're just, dealing with it. So I guess I'm never not a perfectionist. I'm just trying to raise my awareness around it and make better choices.
So what's next for Deborah? What do you have on the horizons that you're looking forward to?
Well, thank you for that. It's interesting that you asked, because I am actually, as we speak, in a kind of year-end take stock of things, take a look at what 2017 is going to look like, and I'm making some decisions about that as we speak. I will tell you that one of the things I'm excited about is my Flying Fairy musical, as I call it. I've co-written. I'm the composer and lyricist for, working with a book writer on a musical called Petalwink the Fairy, based on a series of children's books by this author who I'm co-writing with. She's developed a brand with merchandising and children's books and all sorts of cool stuff. And we have worked together with a flying team to bring this aerial children's show to life. It brings together three of my loves, which is Cirque, aerial spectacle, right, aerial arts, with musical theater, of course, a huge professional anchor for me, and children's music. I was a writer for Children's Television Workshop for a while, and I love doing music for children that's not kid music, right, because kids today are so sophisticated. You got 2-year-olds who can operate an iPad better than I can, and 8-year-old girls are looking at Monster High and Lady Gaga and want sophisticated music. And of course, I love pop music. So this is like a pop Disney movie type of score that accompanies a live aerial show that is suitable for kids and their parents, with kind of that Disney animated movie vibe where it's there at a kid level, but there's also like a more sophisticated adult level that you can get as well. And that show is going to get a teeny little production as part of a summer workshop with a woman who started a new theater company last year, is quite well connected in Hollywood. And she and I are putting together a really great design and production team, and to give this show a first look, basically. So I'm getting to see this little dream come true, and I'm in the process of rewriting and creating all the demos and charts and everything for that show now.
Hashtag dreams and drive for Deborah.
And then I'm also looking for ways to really integrate this idea of empowering others, empowering artists, freedom and abundance and gratitude and love, and especially around Thanksgiving, that's very much on my mind, and really bringing together the ways that people can create abundance for themselves, free themselves up, and really do what they're here on the planet to do, as opposed to things like worrying about money or feeling like a failure.
So what tips would you have for, let's say the modern day aspiring, I didn't want to say show business man or woman, but just somebody who wants to get into the industry now, being that you've seen it over the course of, the years that you've been in it. You've seen it change. You've seen it more, if you've seen it change for the better or the worse. What do you think somebody who wants to get into it now really needs to understand?
It's a really great question again. So number one is meet everybody you can. The name of the game is and always has been relationships. Meet everybody you can. Cultivate the relationships with the people that resonate with you, that you admire, that you respect, that not that you think can do something for you, right? But that you feel like, you could learn something from this person, right? This person could be a role model. This person is someone who you think is awesome or are intimidated by, right? Like that really just meet everybody you can, go to everything you can. There is so much online connectivity available, but I think online relationships can only go so far. So use the online space to find out where you need to physically put yourself, and then put yourself there and meet people, shake hands, make eye contact, cultivate real relationships. That is what is going to give you the breaks that you're looking for.
Love it. Love it. So let's go into our lightning round now. So this part, Deborah, I want you to, I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind, okay? And as you know, this goes with our whole dreams and drive metaphor, okay?
Okay, got it.
The first word is park.
Of course, the first thing that comes to me is drive.
All right, that works.
Rest. I'll go with rest.
Okay.
Rest, rejuvenation, rest.
Reverse.
Don't look back.
Neutral.
Chillin'.
And then drive.
Go for it.
All right. And if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So, Deborah, tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
Let's see. 3 keys. Confidence is important. Have confidence in, even if you are not yet good at what you want to be good at, or you're not accomplished in a field you want to be accomplished in, have confidence in just who you are. That even if all you're bringing to the table is willingness, a work ethic, a nice smile, youthful energy, an open mind, right? You have choice about what you're bringing to the table. So have confidence, know what you're bringing, and be and have the confidence in that. And the flip side of that is be open, be humble, be willing. Know that you can always learn something. Know that there is no such thing as failure. There's only learning. There's only what is the lesson here? What is the teacher here? So be open, be willing, be flexible. And I think the other toolkit really is a work ethic. Like, really be willing to put yourself to work. Don't expect things to just be handed to you. None of us came out of the womb a master. Be willing to put yourself to work and earn those kudos, because it is so much sweeter when you have worked to get there. It really is.
So where can our dream drivers find you online if they want to check out your work or maybe get in contact with you?
Yes, please. Please go to my website, which is www.hurwitzmusic.com. That's HURWITZ music, one word.com. You can get on my mailing list. You can email me and send messages from that website. If you would like to know more about my network marketing business, you are welcome to visit that website, which is my full name, Deborah Hurwitz, DeborahHurwitz.arbonne.com. And that's A-R-B like boy, O-N-N-E. DeborahHurwitz.arbonne.com. Either of those websites will give you the opportunity to contact me directly. And you can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Bandzoogle.
All right. Thank you so much, Deborah. I know I enjoyed chatting with you and hearing all about your dream driving experience and your tips for success. And I just want to say thank you so much once again. And I hope that our dream drivers listening in also took away as much as I did.
Thank you, Raina. You're a fantastic interviewer. I really do appreciate this. It's been illuminating for me, too.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 62 with Deborah. I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing her share her dream driving story as well as her keys to success. There was so much that we all can take away from Deborah's insights and tips. So I hope that you guys took notes, because when I was interviewing her, my page was full of notes. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to us. Click that subscribe button wherever you're listening, whether it be iTunes, SoundCloud, Google, whatever. Hit that subscribe and also leave a review. The reviews are very, very helpful for new people who are trying to learn what the show is about and whether or not they should listen to it. So give us 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, whatever. But leave a review. That feedback is important. If you want today's show notes, just go to dreamsanddrive.com, click on episode 62, and make sure that you are using that hashtag on social. We're at Dreams and Drive, and our hashtag is Dreams and Drive. So if you like this episode, share it with a friend and use that hashtag. Talk about something that you learned, inspire someone else or encourage someone else to put their dreams in drive. All of this is necessary because there's so many of us who aren't, who don't yet feel like we can get out of park but need that extra motivation. So this week, share this episode with someone who needs to hear this message. I will appreciate you forever. keep dreaming, keep driving, guys. I'm so happy of how much this podcast is growing. Each week, the community keeps getting better and better. We have some great things planned for you all. We have some great guests coming. If you haven't listened to episode 61 with Trent Shelton, please make sure you go back and listen to that one and the previous ones before that with Courtney Futch and all our great guests so far this year. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 63.